Hi, welcome. I'm Lee George, and I'm here to talk to you about content marketing and why it's the only way you have to reach your audiences today. Follow the conversation at #outreachmarketing, and you can tag me at Lee George. So what I want to talk about is really a seismic shift that I see in social media away from engagement and the sort of community management that we've grown accustomed to and really relied on for word of mouth and organic reach, and toward a new paradigm that includes the same or similar cast of characters as we're well familiar with in marketing, the content producers or the media, the content consumers or us as the audience, and advertisers or brands. So first what I want to do is really kind of talk about what happened when social media emerged. So it created this new way for us as consumers to interact with brands. No longer could they just sort of use a megaphone to bombard us with messages, but we actually had the platforms to be able to talk back to them. And it was incredibly empowering. And so brands developed a new sort of model to market to us: paid, earned, and owned. So the idea is that you would have your owned platforms, whether it be your website or social media, where you could build communities and market to them in an attempt to gain earned reach. And then you may also put some paid support behind that. And so that worked for a little while, and we became very sort of dependent on it until something started happening. And you may have noticed social media is kind of like an amusement park ride or like a slide where it's really fun, but we've started kind of going down the slide. And though it may be electric, like this little boy's hair, what's happened is that we're noticing we can't get the sort of organic reach that we once could. And this is due to two main reasons. One is just the proliferation of content, just the sheer volume. And so there's so much competition just to get in front of our audiences that we can't do it via organic means alone because there's just too much content out there. On the other hand, what's also happening is that you've got platforms like Facebook that are using an algorithm to determine what content that we should see. Now, even though as brands we've built communities, people have opted into these communities, you might notice yourself that you're not seeing content that you used to see from brands. And as a brand, you might notice that your organic reach is just plummeting. And in fact, a colleague of mine at Social at Ogilvy published thought leadership earlier this year titled Facebook Zero. And basically, what his research found is that eventually organic reach on Facebook will reach zero. And Facebook does not dispute this. But they say that the algorithm is a way to be able to get you the most valuable content. But again, it's putting control of publishing out of the hands of the brands. And I think what's happened is that we mistook social media for owned property or an owned community in the same way that we thought of our website as something that we truly owned outright. But what's happening is we're realizing that social media, the social media communities that we've built, we don't own those platforms. Those are owned by Facebook, by Twitter, by Instagram, etc. And they're really rented properties. And so we're no longer, we just can't reach them by organic alone. So what do you do? What do you do when the landscape looks like this? When you can't reach someone organically and when people are bombarded with images and with content and with information. Really the only way that you can do it is through advertising, right? That's the way advertising, there's been this misunderstanding of advertising as selling. It's not so much about selling as it is paying for the privilege to get your message in front of someone. Once you have someone's attention, then you can start marketing to them. But the problem is that we know that people don't like to be advertised to, right? That was the beauty of social media, is brands couldn't scream at us anymore. We don't want our experiences to be interrupted with content we're not interested in. If you think about the way that commercials function on TV or print ads function in print, or even banner ads function online, those are very interruptive experiences. There's something that we do everything within our power to avoid. And so what is a brand to do when the only option to get your message in front of someone is paid, but you know that paid is an experience that, an interruptive experience that no one wants and that the public actually runs away from and takes active measures to avoid. So what you want to do is create content that's not tolerated, as so much of advertising and so much of marketing really is, but you want to create content that's really sought out, that attracts attention, much in the same way that this sort of salesperson does here, where everyone is sort of coming around to his kiosk. And how do you do that? Well, one important way is that you don't focus on yourself. For as long as I can remember, we've been talking about social media like a cocktail party. And if you go into a cocktail party and all you do is talk about yourself, people are going to kind of skip it and go talk to someone else because it's incredibly boring. Cocktail parties, like social media, are about conversations. But also, to create content that draws people in, it has to be content that's not about you, but about the people you're trying to reach. And the way you do that is you make your content about the interests and passions and priorities of the people you're trying to reach, and you really look for that intersection between what you as a brand can offer your audience and what they really care about. For example, Nike has done a great job of this, and there are many other brands. One of an Ogilvy brand that I think does a tremendous job doing this is British Airways, and one of the ways they do it is through storytelling. So you're not selling someone, you're not harping on features and those sorts of things, but you're really kind of telling a story. You're taking someone along an emotional journey. And in the case of British Airways, it's all about reuniting a son and a mother who live countries apart, and the role of British Airways in bringing them together, which is an incredibly emotional story and journey to take someone on. It's something that resonates with each of us. So if you need to create content that attracts and isn't tolerated, that integrates into an experience and doesn't disrupt an experience, but you know you can't do that organically, what choice do you have? Because you know paid media has been sort of intrinsically interrupted. So this is why something called native advertising, it's also called sponsored content or branded content, becomes so powerful. So for those that you don't know, branded content, native advertising, sponsored content is content that is integrated into a publisher's site. So it could be The Atlantic, it could be BuzzFeed, etc. And it looks like editorial content, but it's called out. You might see a line that says sponsored content or brought to you by the name of the brand. This isn't something that's new. You know, we've had advertorials for a long time. I think what's different about this is really the collaboration between the publisher and the brand. And the way I like to talk about it is to use Bewitched. I don't know how many of you remember that show. I may be dating myself. But it's a show about this wife who is a witch, Samantha Stevens. She's got the blue shirt on. And you know, she's married, she's got a lovely suburban life, a family, and she likes being thought of as kind of a regular person. It's not that she's giving up her witchdom, but she's really integrating into that suburban life. By contrast, you have her mother, seen in the background here, who doesn't want to be kind of part of that suburban life at all, and in fact wants to kind of throw her witchness into the face of the suburbanites. In much the same way, banner ad is just kind of blinking at us in a refusal to be ignored. And so what native advertising does is, instead of creating that sort of interruptive experience of a banner ad, it really becomes sort of integrated into the experience. Now again, to be successful, you can't just talk about yourself. It's not an ad. You're providing content that's valuable to the audiences of that publication. So you really have to understand who reads that publication or visits that website, the kind of information that's useful to them. What's interesting too about native content is that we're very conflicted about it. So much like ABBA, where it's sort of a guilty pleasure, people are embarrassed to admit that they like it, although I would say that I love ABBA very much. With native advertising, people are conflicted because on the one hand, it is advertising, which people don't like. And also because it's integrated into an editorial experience, people instinctively feel like it's misleading. If you're an ad, people feel like you should come right out and say it, you should be blinking. There's this misconception that ads have to be this interruptive experience. However, what's interesting is branded content works when it meets certain criteria. One, if it's transparent, so you make it clear that it's not editorial content, that it's something that's brought to you by a brand, but it's also something that's valuable. So that might be thought leadership, that might be kind of inside tips or tricks, or some sort of information that helps people in their daily lives. It has to be authoritative, so you have to be an expert in that field, and you have to build trust. And doing all those other things is a way to build trust. And so it's interesting when people are surveyed about branded content and ask their feelings. On the one hand, they'll say, no, we don't trust it at all. It's being deceptive. But on the other hand, they'll say, well, I feel like it's more credible than Fox News and as credible as CNN. So you can see there's a huge amount of conflict around native advertising, around branded content. But there is branded content that's successful, and it's because they build trust with the readership and the audience of the publication or the website. They are clear as to the fact that they're branded content, so they're transparent, and they offer an expert opinion that's valuable, that might be thought leadership, that's helpful to people. So the takeaways. So first of all, social media, as we've understood it, is disappearing. Organic reach is disappearing, and brands can't rely on that alone to reach the audiences they want to reach. Paid media is becoming more and more important because of the volume of content and because of algorithms, just to be able to get in front of people and get your messages seen. We've also seen that, ultimately on social media, customers don't want to be brands' friends. They want information that will make their lives easier. So it's not so much about engagement, it's about providing valuable information that is meaningful to consumers. And so that information isn't information necessarily about your product or service. It's information that helps people in their lives. It could be a story, an emotional journey you take them on. It could be something about how your brand intersects with the passions of your audience. But in any case, it can't be something that's self-referential back to the brand, only about the brand. It has to be about your audience and your customers. And then to be successful, you have to integrate your content into the online experiences and offline experiences, I would say, of the people you're trying to reach. You can't interrupt people's experience, because we've known, and experience has shown this, that you'll be ignored, and that people will take active steps to avoid you. So what you want to do is have content that people seek out rather than tolerate. And again, you do that by creating content that's about your consumers' interests, passions, drivers, not just about yourself. And then finally, that the public is ambivalent about paid content that's integrated into editorial content. In other words, branded content, sponsored content, native advertising. And so to be successful in that sort of an integrated experience, you really need to build trust by being transparent, by offering information or content of value. So thank you so much. Here's my contact information. Please feel free to reach out, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.